everybody, welcome to the music room. Good to see you on this eDay. I hope you guys are all having a blast today. I thank you for coming to my classroom for a few minutes to learn about instruments. In fact, today I'm going to be teaching you about percussion instruments. I actually love percussion instruments. You see, when I was in high school and college, percussion instruments were the instruments that I spent all my time playing. I practiced 10 hours every week on percussion instruments alone. Can you believe that? 10 hours! That's right, friends. 10 hours a week playing nothing but percussion instruments. So I know quite a lot about them, and I really enjoy them. So what is a percussion instrument? Well, a percussion instrument is any instrument that you hit. So for example, you could hit it with your hands, like a drum, right? Or an instrument that you hit with a drumstick, like a cowbell. Or an instrument that you hit with a mallet, like a bass bar. That's right, a percussion instrument is any instrument you hit, but not your little brother or sister. It's a joke. Well, anyways, okay, so let's come over here to my handy dandy percussion instrument chart. Right there, yeah. Ooh, percussion instruments. You see, percussion instruments have really two different categories. We have pitched percussion instruments and unpitched percussion instruments. And I'm going to tell you the difference. Really, it's one thing. Pitched instruments have pitches. They have notes. Unpitched instruments, they don't. They just make sounds. All right? So pitched instruments have notes. Unpitched instruments play sounds. Let's start with pitched instruments. In my classroom, all of these instruments are pitched percussion. And all of these instruments over here, as well as these instruments over here, are unpitched percussion instruments. So those ones over there have pitches. They have notes. See, look at all those notes. Tons of notes. And these instruments, the drums, and these instruments over here, all just make sounds. They don't have pitches. Now, within the pitched category of percussion instruments, we have three different types. We have xylophones, metallophones, and glockenspiels. Xylophones and metallophones look pretty similar. Let me show you. There's a metallophone. There's a xylophone. The size is the same. The difference is what the notes are made out of. These notes are made out of metal, and these notes are made out of wood. Glockenspiels, on the other hand, they look a lot different because they're tiny. See? Take a look. These are the glockenspiels. Just like metallophones, they still have metal notes, but the instrument is so much smaller, it makes a completely different sound. Now, within these different types of pitched percussion instruments, so within the xylophones, metallophones, and glockenspiels, we also have three different kinds. Let me show you. Back to here. Right now, we're talking about pitched percussion instruments. Let's start with xylophones. Okay? Xylophones, metallophones, and glockenspiels. But let's start with xylophones. See, xylophones have three different kinds. Metallophones have three different kinds. And glockenspiels also have three different kinds. They're called sopranos, altos, and basses. You want to know the difference? Sopranos are the highest. They're also the smallest of the instruments. So for example, this is a soprano xylophone. it's going to sound the highest of all the xylophones. Now let me show you an alto xylophone. An alto xylophone is a little bit bigger and therefore a little bit lower than a soprano. This is an alto xylophone. And now for everyone's favorite, the bass xylophone. These ones are big. The same thing is true of metallophones. We have soprano metallophones, which are the highest and the smallest. We have alto metallophones, which are a little bigger and lower. And again, everyone's favorite, the bass metallophone, which is the lowest. Now with glockenspiels, in theory there would also be sopranos, altos, and basses, but the truth is in my classroom I only have sopranos and altos. So let me show you the difference between those two. The soprano glockenspiel is the smallest and the highest. Then the alto glockenspiel is bigger and a little lower. Isn't that beautiful? I love those instruments. Pitched instruments are fantastic. It's the pitched instruments that we'll use to make any melodies. Okay, so if you want to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you're going to use one of these pitched percussion instruments. You wouldn't use a drum to play that because drums don't have pitches. They don't have notes. Okay? Now, let's move on to our unpitched percussion instruments. I hope that you understand pitched instruments pretty well by now. Xylophones, metallophones, glockenspiels, sopranos, altos, and basses of each. Now let's look at the unpitched percussion instruments. Now we're going to separate things into 4 different groups. We've got the woods, the metals, the drums, and the shaker scrapers. And within each group, we have tons of different kinds. I've actually organized my room according to their groups. So the drums, of course, are here and up here. See those drums? And under here. See, well, back there. I'll tell you some of the names of these instruments. Over here we have the tubano drums. And the tubano drums go from really, really big to really, really small. The tops of them. And that, just like with our pitched instruments, is a different sound. So bigger instruments have lower sounds. Okay. There's the lowest one. Medium drums have a little higher sound. And small drums have a higher sound than that. I have other kinds of drums too, like conga drums, a djembe drum, talking drums. Okay, timba drums. This is a cajon, a type of drum. And underneath we have frame drums, 3 different sizes. The smallest one, medium, and large. Now, each of these 3 drums, because they're different sizes, will produce higher or lower sounds. But that doesn't mean that they're pitched. They're still unpitched instruments, because when we talk about pitched instruments, we're really talking about pitches like A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. We're talking about the notes on a piano, for example. Here we just have a low sound, a medium sound, and a high sound. Take a listen. The highest one, a little lower, and the lowest. Funny how that happens. Every time we have a big instrument, it's lower. And every time we have a small instrument, it's higher. That's physics, friends. I think. But anyways, let's look at some of our other unpitched instruments. You've gotten a pretty good view of my drums, but now let's look at my woods, my wooden instruments. All right. Rhythm sticks. They're made out of wood. Castanets. Wood. A wood block. Wood. A rain stick. It's wood, okay? Those are my wooden instruments, and I have a few more than that. I also have my metal instruments. For example, jingle bells. Jingle sticks. My flexitone. A triangle. Cymbals. And finger cymbals. Oh, isn't that beautiful? So pretty. Those are my metal instruments. And now let's look at the shaker scrapers. Of course, you've got the classic maraca. Go Colts! Just a shaker. Shaky eggs. Ah, a scraper. This is a weirdo. Not a weirdo. In a weirdo, you play by scraping. And I know you guys like this one, thunder drum. Now you might be wondering, Mr. Doublestein, isn't a thunder drum a drum? Like, why are you putting in the shaker scrapers? Well, I put in the shaker scrapers because you also shake it to make the sound. But you're right, it could have gone in the drum group as well. Same thing's true of a tambourine. Have you ever thought about a tambourine? A tambourine is made out of wood, so you'd think it's in the wood group, right? Well, yeah, but it also has these metal jingles. Well, that makes me think it's a metal instrument. Well, yeah, but it's also got a drum head on it. That makes me think it's a drum. And to play it, you shake it. Doesn't that make it a shaker scraper? Well, yeah. I guess you could put a tambourine in any of the groups, couldn't you? Well, my friends, I hope today's lesson has been helpful. I know you get to see these instruments all the time, but we don't always talk about what they're named or what group they're in or what category they're in within the percussion family. Percussion family is a huge group of instruments. There are so many percussion instruments, but really they're separated into two categories: pitched and unpitched. Pitched instruments have notes. Unpitched instruments make sounds. Pitched instruments include xylophones, metallophones, and glockenspiels. And within each kind, there's, well, 3 different types. There's the soprano version, the alto version, and the bass version. Now, when we talk about unpitched percussion instruments, we have woods, metals, drums, and shaker scrapers. Well, I hope that's been interesting for you. I hope you have a great rest of your eDay, and I'll look forward to seeing you again real soon. For Boone Meadow Music, my name is Mr. Doublestein, signing off.